Okay, so here we are. I've dismantled the quad as much as I am going to. It's not as easy pulling this one apart as it is some of the others. This one was a little different for me, so that's why you still see the bottom plate still attached. So yeah, this is going to be a little, this looks like a mess right now, but yeah, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And like I said, this is going to be part one, so that means we are going to be starting with the back end. So that means the air unit, antenna, and we're going to go ahead and do the GPS. So we're going to get all that squared away. So again, in the worry-free FPV kit, you'll have the waterproofing, you'll have an assortment of different picks and toothpicks and things of that nature, and it also comes with these handy little, let's see it here, little plugs. These go into your USB-C and your USB micro. So for now, we're only going to be putting in the USB-C, and that's going to go right here. What that does is when you're waterproofing, that keeps any waterproofing from getting in there, because if that gets waterproofed, then you will have problems because you won't be able to access the port anymore. There won't be transferring any power to it. So I'm gonna put this stuff away so we can get started. All right, so what I'm gonna do, and now mind you, this is gonna be a time-consuming thing. Now, what I've said before in the previous video, the introduction video I posted, most other YouTube videos that you'll find will kind of show you a little bit and then they speed through the rest of it. So it's you kind of up to guessing and figuring out what's what and what's going to do what. So that's why we're breaking this down into 3 parts so that you can see each section of what we're doing. And then once that's all done, the next part will be the next section and then the next section. So this is basically what we're doing. We're doing here, here, then the second part will be here, and then the third part will be here. So let's go ahead, and what we'll do is we'll go ahead and start with the air unit first. So basically we're just going to open this up and keep a paper towel handy because this stuff can get a little messy. And so what I do is I will just put some of it on here. It's kind of belching out right now, so it's going to be a little messy. Just get it on the stick as much as possible. Set that off on a paper towel, and then what we're going to want to cover is all of our solder joints. So you're going to go ahead and you're going to make sure all those get a healthy dosage here. And you just want to make sure it's in there, in the crevices, all of it. Because if you don't cover these and water gets in it, you are in for a bad time. So just some more on here. And sometimes, you know, you'll find ways of doing this to make it a little easier for yourself, but this is just kind of what I'm showing you to do right now to kind of get it started. And as you go, like I said, you'll figure out ways that work better for you. Sometimes you can just put the tube right up to whatever, depending on what it is, and you might be able to just squeeze it all in there, which I may do here, just to get it in, and then use the stick to spread it around. So that might be actually what we do here. Just get a nice liberal coat on there. Try not to fill your screw holes there, because that also will make your life a pain in the butt, because you won't be able to get your screws back in there, and it's just irritating. So again, just cover all the wires, all the solder joints, make sure everything Got nice, good coating, including your antenna here. I just squeeze a nice little glob right on here, like that. I'm just gonna smear that around. Use a little poker, poke it in there. Get it all over there. Don't want anything getting in that at all. So again, you're going to kind of see why we're going to do this in 3 parts, because this is time consuming. It is very, very time consuming getting all of this covered. So you want to make sure you do a good job. You're going to take your time, because I don't want you guys to fail. I don't want you trying to go through all this work of dismantling it and then trying to cover it up, and then all of a sudden you end up with a destroyed quad because one little thing didn't get taken care of quite right. And on average, I think it takes about 15 minutes, a good 15 minutes for this stuff to dry, cure, so you can start working some new parts. I'm just going to pack some in here. Anything that has a hole that could possibly be a hazard for leaking or getting water trapped in something else and making your life miserable, fill it. Same on the side here. I'm just gonna. Now, the air unit, you probably know this, does get hot, does get very warm. So if it gets a little mushy on there, shouldn't be too bad though. If you're flying, especially obviously if you're in the water, it should be keeping cool, or in the rain or snow or whatever. But if you're just flying and it's blistering hot out, you may have a problem. But for the most part, I think you will be fine, because I have never had a problem yet. And like I said, I have dumped lots of water over my quad to test it when I first waterproofed it, and I haven't had any issues. Nothing's fried. So, and I'm going to do this the same way I did that one. And I like to put, I could get some here, just make sure it's all covered, down in there, just pack it in there. That's what they give you all kinds of little picks for. So you just want to make sure that all of it's packed. I'm doing my best to try to film this for you and work at the same time, so I'm trying to make sure my hands aren't blocking the way. I'm not used to working with the camera up above me so much. Just want to make sure that it's in there. You can put this in front of the heater too, sometimes that helps. You'll cure it a little faster. You do have your binding button on the side. I don't like to coat it completely, but I do like to get a little bit on there. Right now I just want to go back and make sure my solder joints are covered. I'm going to put a little more right in there where the antenna connects. And like I said, once I'm done with this, I'll do the test. I'll be your guinea pig, and we'll soak it in some water and if it keeps running, we know we did it right. It was a little messy, I ain't gonna lie. Definitely gets a little messy. That's why you keep your paper towels handy. Occasionally clean your stick off as well. Sometimes it starts gunking up and it doesn't work as well getting stuff in the joints there. Let's see here. And we're gonna put some over here. You wanna make sure this gets covered to your camera. Just gotta make sure when you set this down, you set it somewhere it doesn't get all over the place. It can get frustrating too because you're trying to work around all your wires, stuff attached to other stuff, and it just gets to be a pain in the butt sometimes. So just make sure everything's got a decent coat on it. Again, you're going to want to always, after you're done doing all of your waterproofing, you're going to always want to go back, double check. I think I just got a bunch on that. Of course I did. So I think what we'll do is we're going to go ahead, set this off here, let it dry, and then once that's dried up, we'll check it, maybe do some touch-ups, and then we will move to the GPS and get the bottom side. We'll flip it over, we'll get the bottom side all squared away. So let's go ahead and give this a little bit of time and we'll come back to it. Okay, so it's pretty much tacked up enough to where we can start flipping it over and work on that GPS a little bit. You know, if you've got some moving air on it, it's still a little tacky, but it's not coming off on my finger. But if you get some moving air around it, like a small fan or something, it'll cure probably in, I don't know, 15-20 minutes. But anyway, it's enough to where we can flip it over and start working on this stuff here. But again, just wanted to make sure we reiterate, check everything, go around, make sure everything's got a good seal in it. Got it all over here. There's plenty around the antenna. And then what I also did, I actually did it off camera because I just thought about it, is right up under here, I put a little around the edge. And then obviously you saw me put some down at the base of it. And then we got, all of this was covered right in here. Got all those good and soaked, dried up. And so yeah, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna flip this over. Oh, and then eventually, since this is also part of the back end, I like to, on the battery cable, I like to put some down in here. I haven't done it yet, but we'll put some down in here around this connector, get it nice and packed in there. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll put it in there and then I'll slide a heat shrink sleeve over the whole thing and heat shrink over top of that just to give it a little extra protection. You don't have to. It's just something I like to do. There might be some extra measures you might like doing when you do this that might, you know, just give it a little extra protection. Doesn't hurt. Nothing wrong with that. No harm in taking any extra precautions. So, okay, so we're gonna go ahead and flip this carefully. Try not to make too much of a mess. Try not to break anything off on the other side. I just want to be careful when you have, because obviously everything's still attached here, so to the frame, so I gotta be a little careful. All right, so if you see here, we've got this part that needs to be covered in all that good stuff. And I think I can pop it out of this TPU without damaging anything, hopefully. Let's see here. There we go. So Be careful when you do this. You just don't want to damage stuff. There we go. Probably didn't need to take it out, but so it's a little easier for you guys to work with. But anyway, so you got the battery here, your connecting cable to your boards goes up there. You want to make sure all of this in the back, all of this here, and I mean realistically that's probably all you need to cover on this. But what I do is I would just run a bead all the way around the edges of this whole thing here. The other side, you don't really have to do anything on that side, but definitely the back side where all these connectors and circuitry is, you want to make sure that's all covered. So I'm gonna go ahead, and this time instead of just applying it to the stick, we're just gonna go ahead and get a nice little glob right on here. And again, this is only if your quad has a GPS unit on it. Otherwise, you won't have to really worry about this. So basically what you're gonna do is you're just gonna kinda get that all over here. Just wanna make sure there's a nice liberal amount on everything. Don't want anything exposed. Don't want any water going in any end of any of this. Just get it nice and swirled around. Don't be stingy, because like I said, this stuff's only like 13 bucks for the whole kit. So flip it over, get some underneath on those wires there. What this stuff does is it's a non-conductive rubber, so it won't allow anything. So when it touches all the circuits and whatnot, it's not going to fry anything. So it just turns into a non-conductive rubber, basically. Puts a nice skin over top everything. All right. I'm just trying to get the edges sealed up now. You know, a lot of this stuff you don't have to do all this, but again, you're waterproofing because you don't want to take the chance of anything frying. So you may as well go and take your time, go the extra step, make sure the edges are nice and sealed. Just butter it on there real good. Okay. Now what you're going to notice here is on this little setup, you can take this off or you can slide this out. This is your beeper and your battery operated beeper. So if something happens, this is what makes your sounds. It's also part of the GPS, kind of wires in with that. Because what happens when you lose connection to your transmitter, your goggles, whatever, this will beep, or if this is upside down, this will beep. And there's a push button right under this bar, and it's right here. And that's the only way you can turn that off. So it's already got a heat shrink sleeve right here. It covers the whole thing. You can't really see it super well, but it covers this whole thing. So all we need to do is get the end here sealed, because everything else is already sealed. So we just need to pack some waterproofing up into here, and then possibly a little at the end. And when we get this dried up here, we'll flip it so that you can get a better view of it. But yeah, so let's see if you can get a little bit of a better view here. So yeah, so basically this has got a sleeve, so you don't need to do anything other than get the base of it right here packed with the waterproofing. And then obviously, as you can see, Everything's got a nice layer on it. It's nice and shiny. Now that's the best way when it's dried to tell, to see if you've actually got everything. You've got everything pretty much covered, is when you put it in the light and you can see where all the shiny stuff is. Where all the shiny stuff is where you have gotten all the waterproofing covered on there. So if you see a dull spot, then you can go back, recover it, apply a little more, smear it around, get it on there real good. So while that's sitting there, I'm gonna go ahead and get a little bit started right here. And we're just gonna put it right up in there. You just need to get it in kind of under the sleeve a little bit, pack it in if you can. Yeah, it might be a little difficult, but as long as you get a good amount in there, you should be good. So, let's get it on the sides. You'll notice I've got everything I've got this whole thing sitting on a paper plate because it does get messy. And if you're not careful, it will definitely make a mess. So you can use this to kind of wiggle between the wires and get that waterproofing in there. Just make sure you pack it in real good. Get it underneath the wires. Again, a lot of the quads, not a lot, but most people's quads don't have a GPS unit on them, so you won't have to worry about this. You know, I say put a liberal amount of this stuff on. Just make sure you're not filling things like speaker holes for like your beepers and things like that. You don't want that stuff getting plugged up, because if you plug it, you'll probably never hear it and it'll be useless to you. So just you know, like I said, common sense, be mindful of what you're doing. Make sure, you know, you don't just fill every orifice you can find, you know, because not all of it needs to be completely packed. So, okay, so we're gonna go ahead. Let's see if we can, yeah, we'll do the battery cable after this stuff dries here. Once that's dried, then we can flip it back over and it'll be easier to get to that. All right, so we'll give that a few minutes and then we'll get back to the battery cable, and then that'll be pretty much part one of waterproofing the back end with the air unit, the antenna, and the GPS with the battery cable. The next part, we will obviously be doing the midsection, which is your stack or your boards, your ESC, you know, all your controllers and things like that. Those will actually be really easy because you can pretty much just take this tube, squirt a blob on it, and then just butter it around with a stick. And that's pretty much it. So let's give this a few minutes to dry and then we'll come back. Okay, so we are all tacked up around here. So we're gonna go ahead, flip this whole thing carefully back over, like so. Okay, all right. So again, as you can see, very, very time consuming process, but it's just a lot of apply it and let it soak, and then or let it sit and let it dry. And yeah, so basically you're just gonna wanna get this right between the wires. Just gonna get it up in there. The reason I like doing this is obviously this is going to be your hot point. This is where all of all of your power is going to be surging through. So if any water gets up in there, that's kind of the first thing that's going to fry everything. So I just like to make sure it's just a little extra coverage. Not everybody does it, but you know, it doesn't hurt. It does not hurt one little bit. Just make sure it's all up in the base. See, I'll zoom in a little bit here so you can see it a little better. Yeah, you just pretty much want to get it all in there. And like I said, what I like to do is put a little heat shrink around this after it's tacked up. You can do it when it's wet, it's up to you. And then just give it a nice little sleeve for some extra protection. Okay, so that pretty much is it. That's going to be it for all these parts in the back. The next ones we're going to work on is this here, this board, and then there's a board right here. We're going to get that sealed as well. So yeah, so that concludes part one. Pretty easy, nothing to it really, just, you know, like I said, use your common sense, make sure everything that has a board is covered or solder joint is covered. You know, like this here, you're going to make sure all of these little boards, all these little circuits, and all these solder joints right here that go to your motors, they all need to be covered, especially this. Your capacitor, definitely want to make sure all of this is nice and coated. Sometimes I even put a little on the base or on the top here, bunch down here. You just want to make sure everything is nice and rubberized. That way when water hits it, you don't have to worry about it. It's done. But kind of like the GPS or the beeper unit, you can see that the antenna to my Crossfire has got a heat shrink sleeve around it. So basically it's closed off on this end. The only thing you need to put waterproofing on is right here. Pack it into the end of this heat shrink sleeve. And that's pretty much it. So we'll get to the second part. We'll get this whole midsection done, and then we will get the camera. I'll show you what parts of the camera you need to do, because obviously you're not going to put it over the lens, but we are going to get that whole thing waterproofed as well. Okay, so that concludes part one, and we'll see you in part two.